Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Common Grounds for System Building webinar. My name is Leslie DeBay-Swanson. I'm the Director of Program and Systems Quality here at the National Summer Learning Association. Before we begin, I wanted to give a quick overview of our webinar today. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about NSLA and Common Ground. We'll hear from Lisa White from Spokane Public Schools, and then we'll have a little bit of time for question and answers from our audience. As we're going along, please type your questions into the Q&A box. We will either respond in the text box or you'll get a message saying that your question will be asked and answered live. So please try to use the Q&A box and not the chat box. So a little bit about NSLA. The National Summer Learning Association is the only national nonprofit exclusively focused on closing the achievement gap by increasing access to high-quality summer learning opportunities. NSLA's goal is to increase nationwide the number of high-quality summer learning programs designed to close the achievement gap. To achieve this goal, NSLA recognizes and disseminates what works, offers expertise and support for programs and communities, and advocates for summer learning as a solution for equity and excellence in education. NSLA's work is driven by the belief that all children and youth deserve high-quality summer learning experiences that will help them succeed in college, career, and life. Core to our work is the recognition that high-quality summer learning works. High-quality summer learning programs have been shown to improve reading and math skills, school attachment, motivation, and relationships with adults and peers. NSLA offers in-depth guides and resources and can provide customized technical assistance, interactive training institutes, program quality evaluation, and community landscape assessment. The Common Grounds affinity groups are an intersection of our program and systems quality work. It's a way for us to continue to disseminate and generate awareness in these areas by offering strong interest-based content. Currently, we have 4 groups, one for early literacy, middle grades, system building, and policy. It's our hope that these groups will provide regular briefs on relevant research, best practices, and program spotlights. It's my pleasure to introduce Lisa White. Lisa is the Director of Express and After-School Programs for Spokane Public Schools. Lisa has been an administrator for Spokane Public Schools for the past 24 years. She has been behind the successful development of program and funding for students with a lens on social justice and equity, workforce and economic development, and access to high-quality academic and after-school experiences. Most recently, she was in the position of Director of Career and Technical Education for 11 years. Lisa has catalyzed an opportunity for all students K-12 in Spokane Public Schools to participate in engineering and computer science through First LEGO League JR and First Robotics Challenge. Lisa is an alumni of Gonzaga University with a master's degree in educational administration. I'm going to turn things over to you, Lisa.
Thanks, Leslie. I'm really excited to be here today, and welcome to everyone across the nation. If you are familiar with Washington State, we are on the opposite side of Seattle, and so we enjoy 4 seasons here, and today is 32 degrees and gray. Still waiting for some snow. So I'm excited to be here with everyone today and hope that you find this interesting, and also that you are excited and see something that you might want to share in the future, knowing that everything here is available online and that we will definitely have opportunities for you to access any of our resources because we are a public entity. I'm going to have Leslie scroll through my slides. It seems as though I can't control them, so I'm going to have Leslie push that. Thank you so much, if that's okay. today we're going to talk about common ground for community system building. And Spokane Public Schools is the second largest district in Washington State. Seattle is number one, we are number two, and we have over 30,000 students who attend our schools, kindergarten through 12th grade. We are also a charter authorizer, one of the only charter authorizers in Washington State as a school district. And so we authorize 2 charter schools that live within the boundaries of our school district. We also have some magnet schools, Montessori schools, gifted programs, and homeschool cooperatives, which I think are pretty general across the nation, where people have those opportunities for families. But this is a public school district and publicly funded by the state. For us, common grounds, and for me personally, means every student everywhere in our community, regardless of where they land, in a public or private or charter school, and knowing that during out of school time, it is critical for our entire community that every student has access, or every child has access to high quality after school programs. And however we can do that as a public entity, that is the mission and goal. Leslie, if you can go to the next slide, that'd be great. Talk about the agenda. Today I want to share with you the why. A lot of times when we're talking about support for children, there can be partisan approach to that, and some folks don't understand why it is necessary or important for them to fund students in the public to be able to have these opportunities. And so we are very clear about our why. I'm going to talk with you about our sequence of courses. Being that I had been in career and technical education for quite a long time, I built quite a few pathways, particularly in STEM, but what we realized is that they were not, the pipelines for them were not full of students, particularly young women and students that were minorities in our system. And so our superintendent and our board was very clear about getting us down into pre-K, K, and all the way through elementary school to start getting kids excited about these opportunities. I'm going to talk specifically about braiding and blending public, private, state, and federal funds. One of the things I would venture to say is that I'm a master at this. And being in a school district, we do have access to a lot of federal funds that I think have been tied to different things in the past, and there's new opportunities in the future. And I want to make sure that everybody across the nation is aware of what we're doing here, so possibly those things could happen in other places. Very, very interested in serving underserved populations. Although we are a predominantly white community, we have 72 different languages being spoken in our district, and we have a very interesting dynamic happening in our community where we have about 40% of our children identifying as more than one race and not Caucasian. And so that's an interesting dynamic when most of our adults are white. And kind of the dynamic around that is that many of our moms are white. They have biracial children, but the person who looks the most like their child is not in our community. And so there is some disparity around adults of color and adults with different ethnic and racial backgrounds being models for these kids. And so that's something that we work on pretty significantly. Also going to talk about summer employment and building a pathway for kids so that if they love this work, they can actually be employed in it as they approach college, and then how you can start this in your community, kind of a how do you steal this idea. Go ahead, Leslie. Common ground. When we decided to enter this journey, our school board made this a strategic objective in their strategic plan. And so that made it sure that it was going to be funded, that there was clear commitment across the board about ensuring that it would be funded for not just 1 year or 2 years or when a grant ran out, but that it was fully embraced by the system and the school board to ensure that there was extracurricular and co-curricular activities available for all children. It's very common in school districts to have athletics fully funded at high school and middle school, but what we found is that anything that was academic in nature, like varsity robotics, was not being funded in the same way. And so with the board putting this strategic goal and vision out, goal 1, increase student achievement, with after school being a major component of that, has been the driver of my work. It doesn't mean that I get hundreds of thousands of dollars from the board, but just having their support and their vision, we've been able to integrate robotics and engineering across all 34 of our elementary and 6 choice schools that lead up to 8th grade in the first year. We do that through first robotics and then just robotics clubs, specifically focused on Lego, and that is a K-8 model. We integrated computer science after school at all of those buildings the second year. And then I'm currently working right now on having after school biomedical sciences primer programs for all kids 3rd through 5th grade after school, funded by multiple partners. Go ahead, Leslie. In our district, we are focused on STEM, and when we talk about STEM, it doesn't mean that we want to make sure that everyone goes into a STEM career, but we clearly know that students who do not excel in mathematics and science at an early age really pull themselves out of that pipeline forever. There are chokeholds in math at preschool to kindergarten, and also at 3rd to 4th grade, really looking at the fractions and those type of things. And when you fall away with 2 chokeholds in math, it is really unlikely that you're going to pursue a career that has heavy math and science. And so we just want to make sure that STEM for all means that our math and science curriculum is clearly articulated, supported, and available to all children, and that we don't just give up on kids as maybe we have in the past. In Washington State, no less than 10 years ago, there was a requirement for only 2 years of math for high school graduation, and many, many children only took 2 years of math, getting them barely through algebra, and that really limits their opportunities. Again, it doesn't mean that we expect everyone to go into computer science or biomedical sciences or even engineering, but we don't want a student to get done with us and find out that we didn't prepare them adequately for what their vision and dreams were. STEM choices are the things that we do after, oh, that's okay, Les. The STEM choices are the things we do after school and outside of school time, because we recognize, just like NSLA, that the school day is very finite and there's so much to do during the school day. So STEM choices are those things that we do outside the school day. And Leslie, if you want to go to that next slide, this is our pathway that we've created system-wide to really account for all the time that students would need to spend if this is truly something that they're interested in. And you'll see where we fit in is that extended day in science and technology, kindergarten through 6th grade. We do summer STEM camps that are extensive. We have about 3,000 children that participate preschool through 8th grade in summer STEM camps. And we know that the hours outside of school are the most critical for students, especially at young ages. And then when they get older, we clearly recognize and have data to suggest that students who participate in after-school activities, specifically theater, arts, cyber patriots, anything to do with career and technical education through a CTSO, those students tend to graduate on time and have a peer group of learners around them that they feel like school is their place. And we want to make sure that happens for all students. So this is just an example of one particular pathway, computer science, and how we scope it from preschool all the way through 12th grade. So from an early point in time, families and children know the amount of time that it takes to really build those, what I call I always reference Malcolm Gladwell and his 10,000 hours to be an expert. We want kids to be starting their 10,000 hours much earlier than when they graduate from high school. And so that's, kind of our approach and purpose with families, is to let them know that these hours after school are very important. Next slide, Les. So blended and braided funding, I truly am the master at this. I haven't found a funding stream that I can't find a way to exploit, and I mean that in the kindest way, and especially if there's accountants or other folks that are sitting in the room with me. I actually have 4 accountants that I work with here in the district, because I have funding coming from such a variety of places, and we want to make sure that we are doing everything right and meeting our goals and deadlines and anything that those funding streams have to have. But and when I say that, remember, I'm operating on behalf of 15,000 students, so that's why I need those kind of funds. But it's really important that we look at all funding streams and recognize that this work, in order for it to be long-term and sustainable, it can't just be one funding source. It can't just be one grant. It can't just be parent fees. It can't just be, in our case, some of the bond and levy funds being being put towards this mission. It has to be a blended piece so that if one of the strings in that braid happens to tear or break, the program doesn't go away. And so I am definitely an advocate of finding non-traditional sources of money. And because I was in career and technical education, I was working in every pathway of workforce and was able to recognize that there's always funding in health systems, in safety systems, in training and professional development systems, community college systems, universities. There's just so much money available, and sometimes it takes work to get there. But when you're doing great things on behalf of kids, what I find is that people seek us out. And I'm going to show you about 6 examples of people doing that. So Leslie, if you want to go forward. This is it's a funny and not funny slide, obviously, but sometimes I feel like kids have to do the heavy lifting to make programs available to them, and that really is the adults' responsibility. I just want the kids to be doing great things and adults to see what they're doing and say, of course I would fund that. This is very important to me. Braiding and blending resources very much maximizes resource. And when you're talking about an agenda that is partisan, and specifically in this case, when we're looking at our national government right now, they really do want to maximize resources and avoid duplication. I like to do that too. I don't want to see a bunch of funding going out and having it not really impact children in the way it's supposed to, because it gets tied up in bureaucracies and systems. And because I come from a pretty large bureaucracy, I'm well aware of how that can happen. But we really do need to sustain project well beyond funding cycles. I was around when we started the 21st Century Grants at the federal level, and our district received over $5 million over a 5-year period. And I have to tell you that at the end of that 5 years, there wasn't much left, because if you didn't have $5 million to start with and you don't have a plan to bring it in over time, it's probably not going to be there in the end. And so I am very much about being mindful about the dollars that come in, but also recognizing from the moment I think about a funding source, regardless of what it is, that I recognize that if I say I'm doing it, it's going to be sustainable, and that my job is to make sure that it is taken care of the entire process, and that it's going to continue even if that particular funding source gets done. When you look back at the vision we have, when you stay on your vision, when money comes, it just moves you quicker to your vision. It doesn't take you away from your vision. It doesn't distract you from your vision, but it moves you quicker because you always had the plan. And I think that's where funders are pretty clear with us and fund us, because we don't go running or chasing after different funding streams or change our name to match something that's new and fancy. We stay our course and ask the funder to come join us. And of course, having a variety of funds really does allow us to support marginalized populations. In our district in particular, across the 30,000 students, we are at 50% free and reduced across all buildings, with some being at 100%. And those families do not have resources to pay for after-school programs. And I have other buildings that parents do. In our district, we have provided every one of these resources for free, but we utilize the fact that we have taxpayers and we have folks that are willing to pay for different things, and partners in the community that raise and generate money for us on behalf with those families that can give, so that we can do on behalf of everyone. Go ahead, Leslie. So this is where the good stuff starts. I'm just going to fly through these slides, and you can certainly ask more questions about these, but these are some of our major investments that we've made. When we decided to do First Lego, it is incredibly expensive. It's about $1,000 per team, but it is a varsity level activity for our high school students, and we knew that we had to get our youngers in early on to make sure that they could do that. For us, we have roughly 50 teams, and so we have to make an investment not only in that $1,000 per team, but we also pay our staff a small stipend to work after school with kids. And that could be teachers, classified staff, parents, community partners. We actually have a community partner that Richard Allen Court, which is through Bethel AME Church, and we actually pay them to run an after-school robotics team out of their center, because we are able to access grant funding from the state that they are not able to access. And that's where the children are after school. They're not in one of our schools. They are in their after-school program, so let's bring the program to them. And that's where I talk about common ground. And if we want this for every kid, it really doesn't matter where they reside. We need to make sure that it's where they are. through CTE, the engineering and computer science mentors from industry, that really came with me to this process because I had worked so much in industry. And I'm so thankful for those adults, many of whom have children and want these things for their own children as business owners, but they also want this for their entire community because it builds a workforce that they need. Next one. This is our K-3 coding clubs, and we look at this as a continuum. And it was interesting when we started, many of our kindergartners were at the same level as our fifth graders because they hadn't had access to computer science. Codeorg is out of Washington State and has been very, very impactful on providing free resources for children. Really, we actually, through Harvard and EDX, we've been able to offer kids all the way through college exciting computer science courses that maybe we can't offer as a district, or we couldn't offer if we were a community-based organization. And so we had some initial state funding that was available. Again, the district has put forward, when I say district levy, that's the district paying for staff to lead these activities. And again, if no staff are available at a building, which happens a lot because teachers are tired, I hire community partners, I hire high school and college students, and we make sure that every school has the clubs and the availability of the programs. And then our high school mentors that are in the CS pathways, oftentimes they will come down to the elementary and middle school and mentor students as part of their leadership and employability for career and tech education. Go ahead, Leslie. This is our biomedical primer. Why do I have a cow there? We are dissecting cow eyeballs and talking about how diabetes affects the human body and how the drinks and the food that the kids are eating is affecting their blood sugar in their bodies. We recently were approached by the local blood bank foundation, which has a significant amount of money, and they had seen a news article about us doing a crime scene camp and venturing into biomedical at after school, and reached out and said, whatever you need, multiple years of funding, we want to be your partner in this. And so we are very excited to launch this. It fits into our biomedical pathway program, which is Project Lead the Way. It's a 4-year high school series and then a middle school elective course. And what we're doing is offering 3rd through 5th grade students an opportunity after school to understand their bodies, diabetes, do some lab skills through the dissection process, decide if that might even be something they are excited or interested in, and then helping them, if they want to, find that pathway. And this is where that math and science comes in. Math and science starts to get pretty difficult in 3rd through 5th grade, and at 6th grade in our district is when you decide what math you're going to take in middle school. And if you do not choose to take algebra by the time you're out of middle school, for us in 8th grade, you are not on track to get to calculus, which is quite honestly a gatekeeper for many of these STEM careers. It isn't as much a gatekeeper for the biomedical and healthcare pathways, but it definitely is a gatekeeper for the others. And so we hope that these after-school programs excite kids enough that when math and science get hard, they have a goal and an end in mind, and they've seen what they can do with this as an adult or as a high school or college student, and that they stick with it and that we can provide them the support. So kind of, you know, our message is always high expectations, high support. Go ahead, Leslie. Another joy of my job is that I also get to provide athletics at elementary. And this is where those common ground community partners come into place. When we went through the recession, we cut about $50 million worth of funding from our district, and all of it was in enhancements to children. And at the time, we had pretty extensive after-school programs for kids, and they all got cut, kindergarten through 6th grade. And one of our community partners, Active for Youth, which is a husband-wife team who are avid runners, they decided that they wanted to do kindergarten through 6th grade cross-country and fund a coach at every one of our buildings. And that's how they started. And when the district reasserted their vision around after school, Active for Youth was doing one coach per building for about 20 children. And now we have almost 4,000 kids running kindergarten through 6th grade in a cross-country season with all of these partners. The district does, of course, invest from the levy for some of our coaching time, but Active for Youth raises $47,000 to go right back to the district. And again, we are at scale. So I would tell you that even if you're in a small community, having partners that shoe companies and different things like that, people want kids doing active and amazing things. And this is one of the biggest programs that we operate in the fall and has the most children participating. And our hope, of course, is that they have a lifelong opportunity and they know from a young age that being healthy is really important. This program also leads into we have a spring programs called Bloomsday. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of Bloomsday. It's one of the biggest road races in the country. And Bloomsday does Fit for Bloomsday in the spring for free for all children. And then we also have a program called Girls on the Run, which is a running club and a social emotional development program for girls. Go ahead, Leslie. This is my sweets. I love them. This is another one of those blended models. We utilize our federal and state English language development funds, which all districts get if they have English language learners. We do after school homework clubs with them every day after school. And before, they were just practicing whatever was coming to them from the classroom and practicing language acquisition around that. And what we decided to do was talk about what would it look like if kids were practicing language acquisition around math and science concepts and STEM concepts. And that has been really powerful for the children because oftentimes their conversational language is not as developed, but when they know the vocabulary for a specific area, it allows them to go into those electives and opportunities that occur at high school. So we do after school programs. We also do a 3-week extensive summer language camp where 300 children come. They're all English language learners, and we've received some private funding from a out-of-school organization, Schools Out Washington, and we use Gonzaga University, which is one of our major universities on campus. So another great program, and again, being very targeted to a group of students who oftentimes don't show up in some of our traditional programs. So we developed a program for them so that they would have the same access as other kids. Go ahead, Leslie. And finally, this is one that, again, using federal program dollars, we have federal title dollars, which everyone has federal title funds for low-income children. And recently, the federal government said that these opportunities could be used not only for literacy and mathematics, but could be targeted for STEM education. And so when 3rd graders are not reading at high levels, we offer them a 4 or 5 week extensive summer reading camp that has an hour a day of STEM at the end of the day. And we call it an academy. It's not remediation. And these kids are pretty, they're pretty sad because they're not reading. They're pretty angry. But by the end of camp, they have so much more confidence and they've found something that they're passionate about. And then for their next 2 summers, they actually get to go to our district STEM camps for free for 4 weeks, paid for by federal title dollars. And that's a pretty awesome opportunity. We're up to about 600 children who can access that this year. And next year, this coming summer in 2018, it'll be about 800 children who will have access to free STEM camp, extensive and deep STEM camp for the next 3 years. Go ahead, Leslie. Summer STEM camp. This is our summer life. We do 4 weeks of summer STEM camp in July when our buildings are open. We hire 130 high school and college students who are in math and science pathways. They are super smarties and they're really fun to work with. And we offer preschool through 10th grade camp because I have kids who are aging out of camp now that we've been doing it for 4 years. And their parents, they're 14, their parents want them in care, but they really don't want to be in care. But we have a leadership camp now. And once they turn 16, they're eligible to come on and be paid staff for camp. This past year, we hit 2,772 kids, and we expect that we'll be up around 3,500 students next year in 25 different camps, plus preschool. And then I have some moms who have asked if we would do a birth to 2 camp. And so I'm not quite sure about that. That's not necessarily my area, but I'm pretty excited to see what they come up with. For this camp, it does have a fee to it, but I generate private dollars through scholarships, and also for our homeless students, the McKinney-Vento Act, which is federal dollars, does pay. Many of our churches pay for their youth to attend, and then we always go after underspend from our state programs. Again, this is an example where we are hosting this out of the school district because the public paid for those buildings through levies and bonds, and we want to make sure that we're using our tax dollars in a wonderful way. We also partner with the police department for a program called PAL. We partner with the churches, we partner with community centers, and all folks that are running summer programs have access to the same STEM materials through our district so that they can offer those programs to children in their programs. Go ahead, Leslie. Just wanted to show you some examples of my staff. Again, because our staff is predominantly white and pretty middle class, one of the ways that I'm building the future of our system is by getting kids very young and then keeping them with us for long term. And hopefully that will build the staff of the future and the staff that we need in our community as well as in our district and just nationwide as they leave us. So this is just an example of some of the staff that we have that runs STEM camp for us. Go ahead. Finally, how to scale this idea. If you want to have the vision around this work, you have to get everybody on the same page and really dispel some of the myths and facts about where they might be and what they're thinking. And in this case, we were talking specifically about computer science for everyone and offering that through after school. And so we, because we're educators, I guess sometimes we do have to do article reviews and things like that. But more than anything, going to that page on the bottom with the guiding questions, like I did this with principals. What do you want your kids doing after school? What kind of opportunities do you want kids to have? And most of these folks are middle to upper class folks. Their kids go to the best schools. They are part of our school district, but they may be living in our higher income neighborhoods. But what I find is that they want for their children in their building the same thing they want for their own children. And so when we can write that down and agree on that, it creates the opportunity to figure out how we're going to fund it, because we wouldn't want less for anybody that we wouldn't want for our own children. And so this is how we scaled the idea and where we started many, many years ago and where we are now on this path. Go ahead. Finally, this is just my contact information. I've probably gone too quick and also taken too long. So if I have, I apologize, but you're more than welcome to contact me any way, shape, and form. And we do have our after school menu online for you to visit, as well as our summer STEM camps. So if you are interested in ideas or want to talk funding or just kind of how to work with the school district, that's probably the biggest thing. Is I have had the pleasure of being in the school district for 25 years, and I utilize that on behalf of my community, but I recognize that oftentimes when people are out in the community and they're trying to approach districts, they don't necessarily get that same warm welcome. And so if there's any way I can help with that, I certainly would like to, because my vision really is that we utilize these publicly funded buildings and opportunities, as well as our community partners, and ensure that this opportunity is available for all children because they deserve it. And our whole world will be better for it if we really do the work. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa, for sharing this exciting work that you've been able to do to help support kids and expose them to STEM in Spokane. I'll remind everybody, if you have any questions for Lisa, go ahead and type those in the Q&A box. But while we're waiting to see if anybody has any questions, so Lisa, you talked a lot about the blending and braiding the funding that you've been able to do, and I know that you've developed a lot of tricks over the years. But I want to ask you, what is kind of the most common stumbling blocks do you think that people come across when they're trying to go about doing that and pulling all the different kinds of funding together?
Right. I think what I would say is that you have to look at every area that you're working in as a system and recognize that it has ethics, it has suppliers, it has vendors, it has businesses that raise money around it. It also has businesses that have to pay into it because they're doing something that is completely contrary to the work. My best example of that would be Nickelodeon is this, huge, TV watching thing, and their biggest fundraiser or their foundation money all goes to getting kids outside. And so thinking about what you're doing in terms of how could kids be more safe, Department of Labor and Industries locally, statewide, and nationally has money available for after school programs. It's just that we don't necessarily think of them as a partner. Colleges and universities are constantly looking for partners, especially in science and math for national science grants and things where they can actually demonstrate the work that they're doing and the research they're doing. That can be cumbersome because they're wanting to do research. But on the other hand, if you have research that says that your program is outstanding, you're going to get more money in the future because you can prove that what you do works. It's not just a great idea or what my boss used to say, a heart condition. My heart is so great and I think we're doing good things and I feel good about it. Well, sometimes you have to have research. And so partnering with universities or folks that can actually do some research on your program and give you some data back that says, yeah, this is the thing. When you take that out, people really don't want to reinvent the wheel. They might want to put their name on it. They might want to have a different lens, but they want to know that what they're funding is successful. And I think oftentimes we spend a whole lot of money remaking something, and we should just hit the ground running.
So speaking of partners, what would you say were some of your key partners in doing your work? You've mentioned a lot of ones, but what were the key ones that you think that people should definitely think about?
Right. We have extensive partnerships with our public libraries, both city and county. Spokane is a city, but it lives inside of Spokane County, and we have terrific library systems, and we share many, many resources. We actually share student staff. So if I hire students and they're terrific and they're doing a program and they want to hire those students maybe and do a stipend for them or do something through their foundation, they will hire those same kids because they know that we've trained and vetted them, and that they can pick them up to do. One of our biggest ones recently was doing virtual reality. One of the camps we have is virtual reality. So all my virtual reality staff went over to the library, and the library paid them stipends to run virtual reality camps at the library for free for kids in August when really no one else was running program. So they are excellent partners. And then our city used to be a huge vendor of youth programming through Parks and Recreation, and slowly but surely that kind of dried up. But no less, the public still wants that from them. And so we've kept them very close too, because they have resources like parks and like facilities that we might be able to use and operate activities. You saw cross country, that's all operated at our local parks. We run meets for 1,000 children. We need our parks department to be right side by side with us to run those activities. And we certainly couldn't afford to rent the parks and all the staff and those type of things. So that's really a give from them to make sure that 1,000 kids can enjoy a park for, a couple days during the season.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another question, seeing that you've been in the district for so long, do you have any advice for people who are outside of the school district, advice for how they might approach their school district to do this kind of work?
I would not be afraid to go to the very top at the superintendent level. I think that some people try to start on the ground with somebody they know or whatnot, but I can tell you that when people come and meet with my superintendent, I immediately get a directive from her to find a way to work with them. And I would anyway if they came to me, but I love that she's sponsoring that. And so I love that people in our community feel comfortable enough to go to the superintendent. And again, we're all people. I would do the same thing. I would start there. Obviously, the building principal at every building is a key because they have to sponsor also. But truly, the people who run the building are the office manager and the custodian. And if you don't have them on board, no matter how much space you've been promised or opportunities, you will not be successful if those folks don't love your program and love what you're going to do in their buildings. And so it's kind of high and low, but sometimes people do a shotgun approach to us and go to 6 or 7 different people because we're so big, and that gets really muddy really quick, and people bow out really fast because they don't want to deal with, you know, oh, you're working with this person, this. That is a lot of work. So I think finding a great person, but starting at the top is not a terrible thing.
Good advice. So what is the kind of the next stage, next direction that you want to go in?
Oh, goodness. The next direction is kind of high and low. I'm really looking at that 3 years old to 6-year-old group and what we can do with them around literacy and math without teaching literacy and math, because we're not math and literacy teachers, but just making sure that they have lots of experiences. I am specifically and purposefully working with our low-income families to help them understand the disparity between the amount of money that they may be able to spend on their children for enhanced learning versus folks that are wealthy, and making sure that they know that by participating in programs like this, that they are doing that. It might not be costing them the same amount of money, but it's equal to the experience. And so I have a pretty significant campaign going on that for parents. And then finally, just developing these older kids, literally at 16 years old, hiring them, giving them jobs that make sense and keep them in that interest area through college. And then again, as a large employer, you know, we have almost 4,000 employees and we're kind of a big city. I can't tell you the number of kids who come back and join our IT department or go out and be a school, you know, office manager or whatever, or they decide to go be a teacher. So I would say I'm definitely looking at that from a workforce development area because I want to diversify the staff in the district so we can support kids better.
Great, okay. And so finally, last question, you gave some tips on kind of how to steal this idea. Any other advice you would have you give for other communities or people working in school districts, whoever who might be starting this work? Any other advice?
Mm-hmm. I think we're in a place right now where we all need to work together. And I know that some of my community partners, they have significant capacity issues because they just have a limited funding or a limited staff or whatnot. But the partnership does not have to be equal in the sense that everybody brings the same thing to the table. In fact, that's not appropriate. Sometimes it's access to kids. So for me in my community, I have an enormous amount of resources, whether it be supplies and materials or professional development training, those type of things. I don't need my community partners to necessarily bring money to the table or that. I need them to bring their staff to the table so they can be trained and go out and do great things on behalf of kids when they're not in school. And so I think sometimes people shy away because they're worried that they don't have enough bandwidth to be in a partnership. But a partnership is truly bringing what you have that's your best to the table and figuring out how to do the best thing for kids. And that doesn't always look equal, and it certainly doesn't always, and for me, it barely ever looks like money.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So again, thank you, Lisa, for sharing with us today. I think this is some really great information, and I hope our audience found it informative. I want to wrap up our time together with a couple of announcements. If you're not already a member of Common Grounds, I invite you to sign up for one or more of our groups. You can use the link on the screen to do that on our website. And you'll see it in the Take Action section of our website where you can sign up. And finally, a reminder, if you are not aware, our 2018 Excellence Award applications are up. The round 1 applications are due Thursday, December 21st. So hopefully we will see some applications from some of you. And be sure to follow us on Twitter and Facebook to get the latest updates and announcements from NSLA. And feel free to reach out to Lisa or myself if you have any questions. So again, thank you for joining us today, and I will be in touch.